Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Dr. Melvin Mahone, who's here to share with us coping with stress and building leadership, one man's journey. So are you aware of the harmful impact that workplace stress can have on our well-being? Well, today we'll dive into that question. Dr. Melvin Mahone is an assistant professor of sociology at Payne College in Augusta, Georgia. He earned his PhD in criminal justice with a focus on corrections from Union Institute and University in 2002. Dr. Mahone began his career in criminal justice in 1972 as a federal protective officer and later held roles with the Bureau of Prisons, Florida State Probation and Parole, and Illinois State Parole. He also worked as a process server, mental health worker, drug counselor, and social services trainee. So welcome to the show, Dr. Melvin Mahone.
Thank you, ma'am.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
The book deals with coping with stress and building leadership, one man's journey, the journey I went through in coping with stress from 1980 until now.
So how does workplace stress impact individuals, especially people who are in law enforcement community?
It hampers their ability to carry out their job on a regular basis. Stress is a discomfort and pain, extreme mental pain. It hampers law enforcement from the standpoint of carrying out their job when they're under a lot of stress. I was working 10 to 13 hours a day. It just overwhelmed me, it just consumed me, and I couldn't produce anymore.
So how did you move beyond that?
I moved beyond that after I was forced to resign, I moved beyond that to get therapy once I stopped denying that I had the stress condition, because I denied it a long time. I denied it so much that I turned down disability when the Department of Justice offered it to me. They said, let us give you disability. You have a stress condition. You suffer from depression, paranoia, and PTSD. You have all those illnesses, and we want to give you disability. I said, I don't want your disability, because I didn't want to admit I had the problem. And that's typical of people in law enforcement. It's more masculine to not admit you have the problem.
Are people afraid to admit that they have stress in work environments because they don't know what to do next?
Right. Well, I had to make a decision. I had to get out. I had to make a transition from law enforcement into something else that was less stressful. And I accomplished that after I got my PhD. And after I was homeless, I made a transition from law enforcement into being a professor, which was less stressful. I didn't have to worry about carrying a weapon. I didn't have to worry about injuring someone when I didn't realize I was injuring them. I didn't have to worry about the overwhelming stress that I would be under if I would have stayed in law enforcement.
And you were with law enforcement for quite some time, right?
From 1972 until the last gun carrying position that I had. See, I was a correctional officer. I was a correctional treatment specialist. And then when I left the Department of Justice, I was a parole agent and a probation and parole officer. All those were law enforcement positions, and they required carrying a weapon. I was scared to work in those positions with the stress condition because I would do things without realizing. And I left law enforcement in 1985, and then I was unemployed. I was homeless. I couldn't think for myself. I had to be around people that can think for me. And I started being a substitute school teacher in Chicago, in the suburbs. After that, I started working on the PhD. And when I got my PhD, I immediately had the opportunity to make a total transition from law enforcement into teaching and being in management in education as a dean and coordinator of 2 criminal justice programs at 2 different colleges. One in Bremerton, Washington, and that was Olympic College, and the other one in Chicago, Illinois, Taylor Business Institute. I was a dean of criminal justice. And after that, worked as an adjunct professor, worked as an assistant professor. I assumed the position that I have now for the last 8 years of assistant professor of sociology at Payne College in Augusta, Georgia.
Well, I don't think I can thank you enough for all the service that you've provided our communities, helping keeping our community safe. But it says a lot when we have law enforcement that is so stressed out and so, in many ways, just at a point of not being able, as you mentioned, not being able to think for yourself, that they have to make career changes. What was
Absolutely.
that? Yeah, I mean, what was that pivotal point where you're like, okay, I'm going to do something different now? When you were on the street, how did you come to that point?
Well, I started in 1980 after I was forced to resign law enforcement position as a correctional treatment specialist for the Department of Justice. I started going to the DA, and they were giving therapy and counseling. They didn't find a cure for my PTSD problem until 1997. So from 1980 to 1997, I was on different medications. It was hard because the medication wasn't agreeing with my system, with my nervous system. They put me on, I was on olanzapine, Depakote, and trazodone, and that agreed with me. And I started being normal again. But I still had the stress condition. It never leaves you. So that was the situation.
In your book, you talk about coping with stress, and you went through some very extreme levels of stress. So how do we cope with it?
Well, you think positive. Every day it's different. It goes in cycles, the way you feel. We said and you say, well, yesterday I felt like this, and today I feel like this. You'll know what to do when you're under a lot of stress, when you're trying to cope with a lot of stress. And I've learned to do that. I've learned to know what to do when I feel stressed out. I get like that off and on, but not as much because of the medication. And then in 2009, I had open heart surgery. I battled through that. I had an aortic stenosis, inhaled Agent Orange in Vietnam. It made my valve inoperable. So they had to put an artificial valve in me. They put a pig valve in me. I'm walking around with a pig valve. And I've been fortunate that I haven't had to have surgery again. It usually lasts around 10 years. I've had that pig valve in me since 2009. It's been a while. Not only had to cope with stress, I had to cope with the valve. And I get tired. I get sluggish. I don't have a lot of energy as a result of the valve. And that happened to me in Vietnam when I went on patrols. I inhaled Agent Orange. Now, they gave me disability, the military.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dr. Melvin Mahone in regards to his book, Coping with Stress and Building Leadership, One Man's Journey. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Dr. Melvin Mahone, who's here sharing with us his book, Coping with Stress and Building Leadership, One Man's Journey. You've held so many leadership roles as you've gone along in positions where people look up to you. How do you feel about the role that you have now?
I like the role that I have now because I control it. I control what I teach, who I teach to, the classes. I control all of that. They say, okay, teach each 5 classes. I teach 5 classes a semester, and that's hard, but I control it. I can sit down when I want to. I can stop teaching when I want to. I control everything, and that's a good feeling.
What type of leadership lessons have you learned and that you share in your book that you want our readers and listeners to really grasp?
The leadership that I offer is the very definition of leader, what a leader is. It's the ability to persuade others to follow through effective leadership. And that's what I do. I have 32 students in one class that I'm a leader in, and they follow me. I have 18 students in another class, 20 students in another class that follow me. I have 5 classes, and I lecture on a regular basis. Not to mention, before I started teaching, after I left the Department of Justice, I had jobs in the government where I would use these leadership principles to guide me into doing my job. But more so now, because I have all those people following me and counting on me for instruction.
Do the leadership principles that you share in your book, are those principles that will cover regardless what industry a person is working in?
Yes, they are, especially for training. I train as well as teach. I get students coming to me like the freshmen I have. I have 32 freshmen that follow me, and they're lost. They need someone to lead them, and I do that on a regular basis.
It seems that you're very thoughtful about this leadership role that you have with these young people as they start their new lives and careers. What are some of the thoughts that you have around that?
Well, I'm just glad that I can be there to offer them and to give them something to follow. I've been a police, I've been a correctional officer, correctional treatment specialist, probation and parole officer, parole agent, investigator, drug counselor, mental health counselor, social service career training, resident advisor, substitute school teacher, training specialist, and paralegal since 1972. All those positions were leadership positions, and all those positions discuss with my journey that I've made with having the job that I have. I was responsible for other people when I was in those positions.
I can tell that you take that responsibility very seriously. What advice would you give to one of your students or maybe somebody who's struggling with stress and they just feel like they can't manage it anymore?
Well, I would tell them to seek counsel as soon as they could. And I would tell them, don't be in denial. Admit you have the problem and you have the mental illness, because mental illness is taboo to a lot of people. They don't want to admit they have it. Seek counseling, get medication, and deal with stress head on. Don't try to say you don't have a stress condition when you do have one, and admit it. Don't be in denial like I was. Being in denial cost me a lot. I was homeless for a long time, and I lived in a homeless shelter. But I was lucky. I lived in a homeless shelter where a psychiatrist from Northwestern Hospital oversaw the program, and I had shelter. I wasn't on the street, but I was still homeless because I lived in a homeless shelter. And I slept on floors when I did political volunteering. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I stayed in the political offices of different candidates. They made me sleep on the floor while I helped them with their election. So I've been through a journey that taught me how to persevere the extreme conditions of having the stress condition.
Thank you for taking the time to share your journey with us. What a powerful story you have. I think it really helps people to look at stress in a new light.
I have another book coming out. It's Steps and Suggestions for College Success. It's coming out within the next month. This book talks about stress momentarily. It talks about how you can get burnt out and what to do if you get burnt out. This for students, mostly for freshmen, just starting in college, and start working on another book in December of this year. That's going to deal with overcoming adversities. It's only going to touch on that. That's going to be an extension of coping with stress.
Well, my goodness, Dr. Mahone, I mean, we could talk forever, especially on your book, Coping with Stress and Building Leadership. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
My website is www.Dr. Mahone, Mahone.com. And you can find my books on Amazon.
Well, Dr. Mahone, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mahone. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your book, Coping with Stress and Building Leadership, One Man's Journey. Coping with Stress and Building Leadership is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.